Chapter 5. The Arrival. Inside the AWC, Karen had changed into a soft violet habit with flowing silver designs, the outfit doing her now showered and cleaned fur some justice. She had made her way to the 37th floor and entered the crowded and chaotic meeting room. The meeting hadn't even started yet, and already the politicians and civil service department heads were going at it. People yelling, slamming their fists on tables, screaming to make their points heard and jockeying for position, as if being closer to the podium would make their points or concerns any more important than everyone else's. She sighed and brushed a lock of sandy hair from her face, slipping through the crowd to find a seat at the left side of the room. It took several minutes for the noise to die down as people began to take their seats. Karen looked around for the raccoon she had seen in her vision, hoping that she hadn't actually seen him at the elevator. To her dismay, she found him sitting in the front row. He was turned around and speaking to a pair in the second row. She couldn't tell if he was arguing with them or if he was very passionately affirming a shared opinion and trying to reinforce it. That chill returned, wrapping around her as she hoped she had been wrong somehow. Her focus was broken as a bear approached the podium. A bland, female electronic voice echoed through Karen's head. "Ladies and gentle T-males, please be silent. Hogan Burris, director of the Astral Warding Center, has the floor." Heads turned and people shifted in their seats. Several moments later, and everyone quieted down. Their attention focused on the large brown bear in his expensive black suit, white and red pinstripe shirt and red necktie. The director waited a few more moments to make sure he had everyone's attention, then a few more to add a bit more tension before he spoke. "Good afternoon. I won't bore you all with a broad overview of things. You've already been given as much as we know, number E. We're here to figure out if what happened today constitutes an immediate threat, a possible danger during scrying that we were not yet aware of, or any myriad of possibilities." As if on cue, the whole of the room rose in a clamor. The shouting and arguing started up all over again. The director tried to shout over the noise, but to no avail. The AI voice called for silence again. It went ignored as well. Karen couldn't believe the audacity it took to put your own opinion over the safety and security of a population the size of New York City. Millions of people's lives could be at stake, and the bureaucrats couldn't figure out what to do about it in a mature and civil manner. Now was a time for patience and focus, not rivalries or political advancement. The roar of bickering and blame-throwing was quickly shut out by a high-pitched tone that tore through the minds of everyone in the room. As one, those gathered grabbed at their ears and shrunk down in an attempt to clear their collective heads of the offending sound. As the sound faded away, a loud series of knocks came from the conference room's door. Karen turned with everyone else to find a tall wolf and a shorter badger in battle armor standing in the doorway. The wolf looked around with, were those orange eyes? As his gaze passed over Karen, she wanted to turn from him, but found that she couldn't. He commanded the attention of everyone in the room like some kind of beacon in a storm. The pair began to march forward. "I apologize for that," Tarvish said, voice raised so everyone in the room could hear him. He didn't use the loudspeakers. They would probably hurt more than the attention-grabbing squeal he'd had Artemis send through everyone's implants. "I thought it best if we allowed the director to finish saying what he had to say before we all started bickering." The AWC director regained his composure. "Thank you, sir. May I ask who you are?" Tarvish stopped in the aisle between the divided sections of the first row, placing his hands behind his back and moving to parade rest. "Captain Tarvish Castle of the Eldritch Defense Force." He motioned to Arisa. "This is Chief Petty Officer Arisa Corley. We were asked to sit in on this discussion and provide any help we can. I think I speak for everyone in attendance when I first thank you both for your service to our country and our world," the director said. A round of applause went up. No politician worth their salt would dare to seem anti-military in a gathering like this. "I also thank you both for attending. The expertise the EDF brings with it will be more than welcome." Tarvish nodded. "Thank you, Director. We're happy to be here." The director's attention was caught by something in the back room. He smiled and waved in a large gator and moose who were dressed in maintenance uniforms. The two carried a large sofa around the edge of those seated. They set the sofa down behind and to the left of the podium, then made themselves scarce. With a wave of his thick hand, the director motioned for Tarvish and Arisa to sit. The bear was shrewd, placing the armed and armored pair behind him in plain view of the others. No one else would try to wrestle his authority from him, now that the EDF literally had his back. "I'd like to begin by saying that this sudden wave of TIS cases is unprecedented," the director began as a screen behind him streamed data. Similar data flowed through the overlay of everyone in attendance, certain key points popping up as more relevant according to the viewer. An occurrence such as this cannot be coincidence and should be considered as the first warning of something much larger. A ping went up in the director's mind, accompanied by a soft green glow around a gecko that wished to speak. It took only the blink of an eye to get her name and credentials from the list of attendees. He approved the request, and the female electronic voice spoke to the minds of the gathering. Miss Katrina Walden, of the Department of Public Health. Miss Walden stood. Sir, are there any concerns that this could be a new hazard for anyone scrying for information? As I'm sure you're aware, cases such as those being reported today can give way to panic. That is a fine question, Miss Walden, Director Burris replied. The simple answer is not likely. We believe that this was a singularly unique event, though it did have dire consequences. I would also like to advise you all to be sure to spread the message that while many people were affected by this anomaly, it should not be cause for alarm for the greater populace. Only scryers, specifically only scryers who were actively scrying within the 30-minute window of the anomaly, were affected. Another question. Another electronic announcement came for Christopher Magnan, an attorney for the city. How can you be sure the event is over, sir? Director Burris took a breath. We've asked for volunteers to begin scrying and checking the astral plane to see if everything is safe. A dull murmur went up at that. From the tone, the director could tell very little of it was positive. In fact, he was sure much of it was surprise, shock, and disapproval. The volunteers, he stressed the word, all wish to see what happened to their brother and sister Maggie. Those who began to check on the status of the anomaly have reported back that everything was normal. If that's the case, sir, is there any information concerning what the scryers were viewing during the time the anomaly occurred? No one I've spoken to here has any information on that. With a nod, the director turned his gaze toward Karen. For some reason, all the viewings went unrecorded, even though our system's diagnostics show nothing wrong with the equipment or the programs we use to store viewings for further analysis. He extended his hand and gave a wave toward Karen. However, it just so happens that one of the few unaffected scryers was one of our very own. Miss Karen Missy, if you would be so kind as to join me at the podium, please. Karen stood, every eye in the room upon her as she pulled the hood of her habit back to better show her face. Her sandy brown hair tinkling forward as it was released from the confines of the hood, her ears and scrawny tail twitched as she made her way to the front of the room, suddenly very insecure of herself being scrutinized by these people. Karen, I would appreciate it if you would tell us all what you saw during your scrying session, the director said as he stepped from the podium and motioned for her to take his place. Approaching the podium, Karen looked over the large group, her wide eyes nervous as she tried to collect herself. She swallowed as her eyes found the raccoon from her vision. He was staring at her like all the others, but there was something different that she couldn't quite put her finger on. He almost looked like he recognized her and was trying to remember how he knew her. He almost looked anxious, like he was waiting for something. She took a deep breath to help her calm herself. Just as she was preparing to speak, the building shook and a muffled "Krathum" reverberated through the crowd. Everyone turned, looking for the source of the disturbance. Krathum! A few moments later, another noise cracked through her air and the building shook once more. Those gathered stood almost as one, searching frantically, trying to figure out what was going on. Krathum! Another burst of sound and a harder trembling of the building. This time, a fearful Director Burris pointed out the large window behind the podium. What the hell is that? All eyes turned to see what could best be described as reality folding in on itself in the air over a grouping of apartment towers. The fold in the air seemed to give way, spewing forth crackling bolts of black lighting and a fountain of rippling magenta energy that swirled around a hole in the air. No sooner had the hole appeared than black swarms of creatures began to pour through it into New York's skies. Krathum! Another rippling of the air some distance off transformed into a similar swirling vortex. The room began to panic. Karen stepped back from the podium as Director Burris tried to calm the crowd. Tarvish and Erisa were up trying to assess the situation. Erisa stared out the window, not believing what she was seeing. It's an invasion. They're punching through New York's wards. How is that possible? Tarvish didn't answer. Instead, he was busy speaking with Artemis. Artemis, I want an overview of the city. Use the visuals from my location and try to extrapolate where the other two portals are using the building's seismic data sensors. The shockwave from the portals opening up should definitely have tripped them. Artemis's calm voice replied, "Gathering data now, Captain." A second later, her voice returned, "Sir, Ensign Yatsenko has a visual. I am using this data to show the locations of all portals currently in existence within the city. Do it, and patch me through to Pi Lee's visual feed," Tarvish ordered. "Yes, sir." In the blink of an eye, Artemis created a window over Tarvish's vision, showing him the view through Pi Lee's eyes. He received sensory data, time and distance calculations, and up-close visuals of some of the creatures swarming through the portals. Piley had begun maneuvering around the city's skies to get a good feed on each of the portals as they appeared in order to get better information on them as soon as they began to appear. Tarvish would have to remember that. A second window opened up, revealing a map of New York City. 4 points, highlighted by bright green dots with streaming columns of data, appeared. These are the current locations of all the portals that have appeared so far, Captain. There are energy readings emitting from each portal that seem to be converging approximately 130 feet above your location in the AWC Tower. This could result in the opening of another, much larger, portal. Tarvish cursed and relayed the information to the rest of Gungnir. He turned about as he heard a female voice scream, "Cultist!" Karen had backed away from the podium and almost into Tarvish as she pointed at the raccoon from her visions. The raccoon was sneering as he waved his arms about in strange motions, dark energy flowing from him. He cackled as the energy grew quickly and caused the air to grow thick and humid, making it difficult to breathe. "He's opening up another portal," Arisa shouted as a loud thrumming sound grew around them. She dashed in front of Karen and whipped her hands through the air. Streaks of sapphire energy flowed from her fingertips as she prepared a defensive spell. "Get down!" Tarvish grabbed Karen and wrapped his armored form around her as the thrumming grew to an almost deafening volume. The air grew thick and the building shook. Karen and Tarvish closed their eyes as Arisa finished her spell. Just as the thrumming threatened to burst their eardrums, everything went silent, and the building stopped shaking. Tarvish opened his eyes, ears splaying from curiosity. The room was still full of panicking people, but no, there was no sound. He thought he'd gone deaf as he watched the raccoon cultist in his business attire, standing on his tiptoes, arms raised high as the last remnants of energy surged through him and shot mutely through the ceiling. A moment later, a tidal wave of air and pressure threw Tarvish, Karen, and Arisa to the floor as the rest of the building above them exploded in a blustering roar.